Guys, it's really time that we talked about Disney's beloved classic, Pinocchio, and take this shirt as evidence that I love Disney, but this movie is bonkers. We start with Geppetto, who is an incredibly talented clock hoarder. I'm gonna be honest, these are my favorite scenes in the entire movie. The animation is insane, and the cuckoo clocks are iconic. Geppetto is obviously very talented, but he has focused his talents on making the first reborn doll, which is Pinocchio. He makes this adorable puppet and then uses it to harass Figaro, which I honestly always found upsetting, and I feel like might be an indicator that you're not ready for parenthood. Side note, Figaro and Cleo are my favorite characters in this entire movie, hands down. Anyway, Geppetto goes to sleep after wishing on a star that Pinocchio will become a real boy because he wants to be a father despite his obviously advanced paternal age. This giant blue fairy comes, which is inconsistent with Disney's portrayal of fairies in other movies because Tinkerbell is tiny, and she decides that Geppetto deserves to have his wish come true. Although she does not grant his wish, she basically gives him like a life-threatening problem for a while. That's how we get a living Pinocchio. She also assigns Jiminy, who is just like a couch surfing cricket, to be his conscience, which is a weird choice. She also says that in order for the wish to come fully true, Pinocchio basically has to be perfect, which, ma'am, he's a puppet. They wake up Geppetto and he is absolutely pumped. The music in this movie is iconic. And then because Pinocchio is a big dumb idiot who's been alive for literally 5 seconds, he promptly starts himself on fire. In the morning, despite the fact that it's Pinocchio's literally first full day on Earth, Geppetto decides he has to go to school. Does Pinocchio know how to get to school? No. So obviously, immediately, Amber Alert, he's abducted by Honest John and his sidekick, who is also a cat, but evidently a different variety of cat than Figaro because this cat is human-y. They take him to Stromboli, who ironically has been yearning for a puppet with no strings, which is weird. And then they perform I've Got No Strings, which is an absolute banger. But then he puts Pinocchio into a cage and he's like puppet trafficked. Meanwhile, Geppetto is at home panicking because he made bad choices. He also says nobody else can eat because Pinocchio's not home to eat. Side note, Figaro's meal is this fish, which I feel like is very weird vibes for Cleo, who appears to be eating cake on a hook, which, Geppetto, what are you doing? Jiminy Cricket, who gave up on Pinocchio immediately after seeing him perform because he thought he wanted to be like a big fancy actor, decides he wants to say goodbye to him, at which point he discovers that Pinocchio is actually in a birdcage and didn't just decide he didn't want to be Jiminy's friend anymore. He tries one singular time to break the lock on his cage and then again immediately gives up and then says, I quote, looks pretty hopeless. It will take a miracle to get us out of here. Who put this man in charge? Thankfully, the blue fairy appears to do what she does best, which is honestly be like sort of medium helpful. But it's at this point that we learn that when Pinocchio lies, his nose grows, which is a very weird addition to the story. You know, it's Pinocchio and that's his whole thing. But as far as I remember, it only happens in this one scene and serves basically no real purpose. Anyway, she sets them free. So they're going home. Geppetto is wandering through the rain while his pets starve. Meanwhile, Honest John and I think his name's Gideon meet with Coachman, who is easily the spookiest character in this entire movie. He tells them that he's collecting basically naughty little boys, so he'll pay them to bring him boys, which is very weird and creepy. Pinocchio has been free for 5 minutes and he's immediately abducted by the exact same person who abducted him the first time. And then they put all the boys on like a booze cruise to Pleasure Island. And then we get to this scene, which, listen, Pinocchio is hanging out with his new friend Lampwick, who's honestly a total nightmare. And all the little children just get like crunked to death and smoke their brains out. What are we doing? The amount of drinking and smoking in old Disney movies is actually bananas. There's like a keg, he's filling beers. Also during this time, the coachman has this very upsetting scene where he checks to see if all the little donkey boys have lost the ability to talk, and if they have, he like sells them. Everything about this is weird and bad. Anyway, this idiot turns into a donkey, obviously. Pinocchio has only partially turned into a donkey. Also at this point, they keep saying jackass, like over and over they keep saying jackass, which I feel like that would not fly these days. Thankfully, Jiminy shows up nearly too late, as he always does, and they escape. They get home to find that Geppetto has evacuated the home. He's no longer there. And they find a note, because evidently the blue fairy couldn't be bothered to actually show up, that says Geppetto has been eaten by a whale and he's in the whale's stomach at the bottom of the ocean. Why would that be the case? Why this man went looking for his puppet son and immediately took to the sea is beyond me, but Pinocchio ties a boulder to his tail and jumps into the ocean. Also, of course, Jiminy Cricket follows him, which you're a bug in the ocean. Between the two of them, they may have 10 brain cells. They are looking for Monstro, who is a monster, and this may be the earliest contributor to my fear of whales. Geppetto is living on his boat inside of Monstro, which doesn't make any sense. Also, while he's in here, he's like, poor little Pinocchio, he was such a good boy. Sir, you knew cognizant Pinocchio for perhaps 12 minutes. You lost him immediately. And honestly, he's a complete ding-dong head. The good news, I guess, is that Pinocchio manages to also get eaten by Monstro, which is thrilling for everybody except Monstro because they promptly start a fire inside of him so that he will sneeze them out. And he is literally so pissed about this. He chases them trying to kill them for like a while until they can escape into like a lagoon or something. And Geppetto has a Titanic moment where he's like, go on without me, Pinocchio. Hand to Pinocchio's corpse. He's dead. He has passed. So he's laid out on Geppetto's bed and they're all just like obviously devastated. At which point the Blue Fairy obviously comes back. She never shows up at the crucial moment that could have actually helped them. She waits until everything has gone horribly wrong and then she's like, I guess I'll fix it. At any rate, she turns him into a real human boy and she's like, you did a great job, Pinocchio. And I was like, did he? What part of anything did he do great? And Jiminy Cricket got a gold medal, which he probably only deserved like a bronze at best. But they all live happily ever after. I do hope that Geppetto enrolled in some parenting classes.